is starting. But is it live? No. No, I don't want to. It's fucking... Oh. Sweet. I'm live, and this is great. At 4:30, once I get enough viewers, I shall be, just informing you guys that, the trigger warnings, about the trigger warnings. This is semi-scripted, so I won't be as rambly as I was last time. So, I am just going to wait until 4:30, and then I shall give the trigger warning. So, if it is 5:53, let's see, or just look up here on the elapsed time. Let's get to 4:30, or maybe even a bit longer, I'm not sure, probably 4:30, I shall get to that. So, I'm going to wait until then. Okay. I'm gonna wait until it is 4:30 for me to say the trigger warning, to which I would like anyone who watches the video in the future to just go back to the trigger warning and just listen to it, because that's one of the only times I hope I have to say it. And if you are triggered by these topics, I do suggest that you proceed with caution or just click away. So yeah, I'm going to see how much time has elapsed. Yep. So I am just going to wait, and, you know, feel free to say hi if you're here, whoever you are. Not just me. Yeah. I'm just gonna wait here until it is good. Okay. So it's gonna be 30 seconds of really awkward muttering, and then I shall get into the trigger warning. You know, as one does. I should probably copy the link, because DeviantArt watchers might like to see something. Okay, so sorry, I just left weird time. Sorry about earlier. I changed to videos of videos. No. Okay, so it's okay, Faith. Don't worry. It is 4:30, so I will get into the trigger warning. This character bio does contain triggering topics to some people, such as violence, alcoholism, kidnapping, because this child or person, when they were a child, were like kidnapped, and child soldiers, and like war and things like that. So if that is a triggering set of topics for you, I suggest that you either click off or proceed with caution. Now, I am going to tell my DeviantArt watchers about this, and then I hope I shall get into the video properly. I'm live. I'm just gonna mention that I'm live here, and I'm gonna mention here about my OC chats. OC chat live stream. Perfect. And I'm just gonna paste the link, and hopefully they will go and watch, because that'll be good. So I have gotten this far into this, and the character I shall be talking about today is Natasha. No, it says 19. She doesn't look 19. I'll tell you guys about this. So the character I am going to be drawing today is Natasha. She is a character, in fact, one of the main characters for my webcomic, or comic, because there is a physical copy for myself, but webcomic of War and Practicality, and she is going to be as you can tell, the first, you know, OC chat, first character that I do in an OC chat, and if this is rambly at all, I apologize. I have little notes here about her bio and the points I want to get to, but besides that, I'm not entirely sure which I will or won't be getting to, and if I get off track, if I ramble, I'm sorry, but I have more of a thing to talk about with y'all. So once I am done with her bio, I shall look at your questions, and then I shall answer them accordingly without spoiling anything, because, you know, I'm not about to spoil things for anybody that I don't know what songs are. Yeah, basically. So if you're wondering what this is, just her in a bar. That's something I did traditionally, and the bar stand does not curve like that, but you know, I didn't have a ruler on me, so you get crappy perspective, and so it actually does definitely play a, I guess, key role with this character. So let me get into this. So the character is known as Natasha Reeves. I created her all the way back in February of 2018. Back then, there wasn't much to this character, just a female knight named Lania. As time progressed, I kept revisiting her and another character I was going to get into in the next OC chat, and you know, I decided to redo her for my comic, and as of right now, her name is, like I said earlier, Natasha Reeves. She is asexual. She is demi-romantic, so she would only get with someone romantically if she truly trusted them and felt that they were a good match, and otherwise she would just kind of not be the most comfortable with it, as one might be able to guess. She wouldn't go through with it. She wouldn't be able to trust them. She definitely has trust issues. So she is demi-romantic. Not saying everyone who's demi-romantic has trust issues. She just does in her case. But, you know, she is 19 years old, and I will explain why she does not look like a 19-year-old right here later on. Don't you worry. And she is armed with a sword and shield, and she stands at, I'd say around 7 foot. No, not 7 foot. 5'7". Oh my gosh, 5'7". She's not a giant. She's nowhere near Tiki's height. Tiki's not 7 foot either, but she's nowhere near that. She's 5'7". Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I just messed up there. She's 5'7", and so yeah, she originates from the land of Kurlia, but she currently serves for the Lorien army and is not allowed to go back to her home country anytime soon, for reasons I'll get into later in the video, so don't you worry, just sit tight and relax as best as you can. So, she was sent, or kind of taken to serve the Lorien army, and then, as just a brief overview, there's a time of peace and some other things like that, and that's just some basic things to know. And now, I hope to get into her bio here, and then I'll explain things later and then answer questions, like her backstory and everything like that. And after, I don't know if I'll do my backstory now. I think I'll actually get to her personality first. I'm sorry, I just messed that up. I have a script here, but I am not the most prepared, as you can tell, but my apologies. Anyways, besides that train wreck of a start, let's get into her personality. I guess in a complete juxtaposition to her child self, she is definitely more of a no-nonsense type of gal. She won't take your bull, and she isn't quick to trust new people or people in general. And of course, when not drunk or hungover, she is generally alert and on her feet, and you know, she kind of has to be. She only has like one eye, as you can tell if looking at her. She clearly only has one eye, so, or at least one eye that is usable and not behind an eye patch, or covered by an eye patch, so, you know, she only really has one eye, as you can tell. But, you know, she tends to have to be alert for that reason, because she doesn't have the greatest vision, as one might be able to infer by looking at her. So, yeah, that's one thing. She's generally very on her feet and very alert, and she is quite the fierce and determined warrior, if I do say so myself, and she is quite hardworking, and you'll definitely see that in the comic for sure, and definitely in her backstory once I get to that later on. I'm sorry I teased you guys earlier. I did not mean to, but, you know, basically, she is generally alert, and she's on her feet, and she is very, very hard-working individual. And I'd say she's pretty calculative and cunning. I'm doing a stream, family. Sorry. If you hear yelling out there, my family's yelling for each other while I'm doing a stream. I'm sorry, but basically, she is very cunning, calculative, and she pays some pretty good attention to detail. a good example of this would be in regards to her missing eye and, using it to her advantage on the battlefield. She will fool enemy soldiers into thinking that she is less capable of, combat and thinking they have an easier target, which, they're not necessarily going easier on purpose, they just think they may not have to have as hard of a blow in order to, finish her off. They don't think that they'll have to use as much force because, come on, she clearly, just look at her face, she's not exactly the most, capable looking with the whole missing eye sort of dealio there. She doesn't look very capable, at least not compared to, I guess, your average soldier. So they might go a little easier than they normally would, even if they don't mean to, and she will use this to their advantage. And once they basically kind of target acquired, or whatever their version of that is, basically, oh yeah, they have acquired her as a target, she will fool them, and then, when they try to, actually fight her, she will definitely, beat the crap out of them. She'll let them get the first hit in, and then she will, completely blow their expectations away, and either beat the crap out of them or kill them, depending on, if they're, a child or not. She's not about to kill a child, or beat the crap out of them. Well, she might, but she most likely won't beat the crap out of a child, so, that's what I mean, and you'll understand when I get into the bio, the backstory, I should say, and of course, that is very useful in combat, though, just kind of using her missing eye to her advantage, and I'd say that she'd have to be pretty calculating, or cunning, in order to be able to do this sort of thing, in my opinion, but, feel free to disagree with me. I'll answer comments eventually. So, yeah. And let's see where the script says. Of course, this doesn't always happen with the soldiers being kind of fooled. Someone would be like, I'm not so sure. The fact that she's out in combat and not dead kind of says something. And for those soldiers who, aren't thinking, oh, I have an easy target here. Look at this chick with one eye. Does she even know I'm coming up on her? Probably not. She probably can't even see me. She's not aware of me. Those who know better than to think that, yeah, that happens, which, yeah, that's not great. And in times of that, she'll just kind of let out any of her, I guess, pent-up frustrations and issues, and just kind of lets loose on them. And she generally doesn't care who they are in that case, so yeah, I'd say she's pretty hardworking. Just from that alone, I think that could show that she's relatively hardworking and determined. I don't know, to me it does, but, that she has gone into a blind rage, sometimes in regards to what she deals with. If she has any sort of flashback, she might kind of direct what she's feeling, basically, the residual, and, the traumatic feeling, and she might kind of, not necessarily blame, but, kind of almost that sort of thing where she'll just kind of direct whatever she's feeling, all the negative emotions, into attacking them in a blind rage kind of deal. Not necessarily blind rage, but she'll kind of, with a good deal of ferocity, or however you say it, and she'll just do it to whatever enemy soldier is unlucky enough to be in her way, which obviously can lead to some issues, but yeah, that's what she does. Is it a good method? I'm not sure, but that's what she does. And away from the battlefield, of course, that's mostly on the battlefield, I guess she's usually kind of cold and aloof, as in she doesn't usually interact with someone unless they've really provoked her, or they are her friend, and, there's only 4 people that are her friends, so that she considers her friend, so, yeah, it's really unlikely that she'll consider you any sort of friend, so she'll likely only really talk to you if she has to, or you've really, really provoked her in some way, and she just has to let you know every little thing that she thinks about you, and she will confront you, and that happens sometimes if you really just seem to rub her the wrong way, she will do that. And again, even off the battlefield, she's pretty no nonsense. She's generally, she's pretty judgmental, and as in, like, she will, like, openly question, like, if someone doesn't seem like they're fit for battle, she'll openly question, like, why are you even on the battlefield? Like, you aren't even a capable soldier. Why on earth would they, like, you know, recruit you of all people? Like, what are you even supposed to do here? Like, she will openly criticize and be quite judgmental in that regard, which, I guess, if once I get into her backstory, you can't entirely blame her for, you know, kind of having a sour taste in her mouth when it comes to the Lorien army. I don't think it would leave a great taste in her mouth, which I will get into, don't you worry, but, you know, that's just, it's just something about her. She just doesn't really like many people, and she can get kind of jealous easy and feel cheated if she feels that, oh, why don't I have those things? Like, I went through all this and I have to deal with this, but they don't have to deal with anything that hard, and or she assumes they don't have to deal with anything as hard, well, besides, like, you know, war and killing people, but, you know, because you kill people in combat, but, you know, like, besides that, just like, I'm not sure if you really, like, why do you, someone who seems super privileged, get to, have all this, why do you get to have all this, and I don't, after I've dealt with what I've dealt with, and she's sometimes has that mindset, and she can get quite jealous. And I mean, yeah, you can kind of expect that of somebody who is generally pretty judgmental about someone, and if especially provoked, will inform you that you just really rub her the wrong way in not the nicest way, but yeah. You could definitely say that she's bold, critical, judgmental, and just kind of, she can be kind of aloof off the battlefield. She generally doesn't like interacting with people, and there's only a few exceptions to that. Like, if she feels that she can especially relate to them, she will maybe interact with them, like if they're like her friends, but that's literally like one of the only cases that she will ever interact with anyone. So, yeah, she doesn't usually interact with very many people, and she's kind of cold and aloof and judgmental, like I keep saying. So, yeah. And, you know, I will say that she does. Yeah, I think I did mention earlier, there is alcoholism in the bio, or the backstory, I should say, not necessarily the bio, but the backstory itself, which is what will explain a lot of what I've been saying, and you'll understand a lot better, it'll click. And the only reason I don't have this in the comic is because it's kind of set in their present day, and I don't want it to be one big backstory. Of course, I guess you'll kind of see hints if they have like a flashback or something, or someone mentions something like, oh, do you remember this, or something like that. But, like, that's about it. That's really about it. There's not going to be a whole lot, you know, of, oh, look at this character's backstory and all the things they went through. There's not going to be very much, and if there is, it's going to be very, very minimal, and it's probably not going to happen much. So that is why I'm doing the backstory now, and everything will click. Again, with trigger warning, there are things with, you know, alcoholism and that sort of deal, so I will get into it. And I do have the bio linked in the description, just if you want to read that out, and if any of this is confusing, you can read that, and you can understand. Just do that if this is confusing you. So, I do apologize if any of this is confusing to you, and I will completely explain what, most of it should be explained when I explain her backstory here in just a moment. And again, I just put that trigger warning back out there. Just go back to the trigger warning if you've forgotten what it said. I think it was like 4:30 when I did it. So just skip back to that time and just kind of listen to what I said there, and then you can come back to whatever is going on right now, at whatever time it is right now. Okay. So now I can actually get to it properly explaining things. Okay, so, Natasha Reeves. She is a Corellian soldier. She, as in, oh, she's a Lorien soldier, but she is from the land of Corellia. And she came from a small farming village named Rasha. Yeah, it sounds a lot like Russia. Sorry about that. Rasha. That's how it's spelled. But basically, she came from a small farming village. Her father had been a soldier in this war for a little bit, but he ended up dying in combat. And this left, obviously, her mother, a single mother, and ended up making a young Natasha, a very busy young Natasha, around, I'd say, let's see, it doesn't say this in the bio, but I'd say probably around age 4 or 5. Like, she became, you know, somewhat busy farm girl Natasha to super busy Natasha because her mom's literally a single mother at this point, and they have a farm to, like, keep control of and manage, like, mostly by themselves. Maybe some minimal help from the some neighbors at most. Like, at most, and that's hardly ever happens. So, they're doing a lot of work. So, and I will say this does build up a lot of endurance for Natasha and strength, which will definitely help you to remember that bit of knowledge right there. But, you know, her mom's a single mom, and she wants to make sure that her child is safe, but also wants to make sure that they have a roof over their head, so they work very, very hard. And she always makes sure to keep up with the times and whatever news is going around, and there, unfortunately, was news, and there had been news for a little while, that, you know, Loria, the country that they are a tributary state to, they are tributary, I don't know if that's the correct term, but, you know, that's basically, they're a tributary state to, Loria, and essentially, because of that, they were, not because of that, but basically Loria, they were running low on their male soldiers. They're running low on their ranks, and rather than, you know, basically recruit, or draft other adults from their tributary state and their own country, they basically resorted to taking children in hopes to preserve their male ranks, which, yeah, they're strong soldiers, like the ranks, basically. They wanted to preserve it, so they took children. And that's really messed up, and they did not do it from their own country, but their tributary states, so that they thought, oh, maybe we can get away with this a little more, and just try to pass it off as, oh, but you're giving us something, haven't you noticed we haven't been taking nearly as much in other places, things like that, like, we haven't been taking nearly enough resources, or other resources, as normally, like, than we normally do, like, if that makes any sense, so we're not taking as much, like, haven't you noticed that, and things like that, so, they, try to get away with it, and I guess they do somewhat. I'm not going to say too much about that, because I don't want to spoil nothing, but basically, the mother finds out about this. Amelia, which is Natasha's mom, she obviously knows about this, and so she, not necessarily to scare her daughter at this time that is 9 years old, but she informs her that, hey, please do not go anywhere like the woods, for example, alone, because there are soldiers from, you know, Loria that are taking young children, and they are making them fight in the war. And she told her daughter this, so her daughter would keep safe, and so her daughter would have an open mind, so if anything weird happened, you know, she would do it. And she told her, hey, please don't go with your friends, and especially don't go alone, because the Lorian soldiers will come and take you away from me. And now, Natasha, she, well, she didn't quite believe this. In fact, she didn't believe it at all. She believed what her mother was saying to be nothing more than an old wives' tale, because, let's be honest, if you think about it, so your mother's saying, oh yeah, don't go into the woods with your friends, and especially not alone, because the Lorian soldiers will come, take you away, and make you fight in the war. Like, that does sound a lot like an old wives' tale. Like, it does. It really does. And so that's what Natasha at the time took it as. Like, she's like, oh yeah, she's just trying to scare me into staying, like, here and not going anywhere without her permission or her observation or an adult watching. Like, oh yeah, she's just trying to make sure I stay obedient. Whatever. It's just an old wives' tale. Because it does sound like an old wives' tale. Like, yeah, she's kind of being ignorant. She's not really being wise or smart about it, but at the same time, she's a 9-year-old child. Like, yeah, she might have some more knowledge than, say, a 5-year-old, but she's not exactly going to have the intellect of an adult. No, she won't. She'll definitely be a bit more ignorant and naive, and that's just how it is. She's a 9-year-old kid. What do you think she's gonna do? She's, like, that's what, I don't know, to me that's what I expect. But basically, she and 5 of her friends are like, let's go see if this is true. And they decide to have an adventure in the woods because they're young and dumb at this point. They're being very dumb. And, she and 5 of her friends, they go into the woods, okay? And they're like, oh yeah, nothing's gonna happen. Like, at most, maybe someone our parents sent to scare us. Like, no, we're not gonna see any soldiers. There's no reports of it happening in our village, because at the time, no one from Russia, or the village that, Natasha grew up in, had been taken. But kids had been taken from nearby villages. So, obviously, like, her mom was right, but, like, she and her friends, like, they really didn't believe it. They're like, it didn't happen in our village. I think if it were really happening, there would be more word about it. How come we don't hear that much about it? And they're just like, oh yeah, it's fake, whatever. So basically, they go in, and they see a guy who claims to be a soldier. Now, most cases, you'd hope they'd be smart and be like, oh wait, our parents warned us about this. And 3 of them were. 3 of them were smart and like, hey, wait a minute, this is weird, hey, you, like, just stay and keep watch, and 2 of us will go and inform an adult of what we've just stumbled across and what just happened. And this soldier here, now, Natasha and 2 of her friends do not believe this guy to be a soldier, because what this guy is wearing, you have to imagine this, some guy in the woods, okay, claims to be a soldier, and keep in mind, he has very makeshift armor that looks like something they could have made, like a 9-year-old child could have made, super makeshift armor. Like, you couldn't really consider armor, it looks so fake, and, on top of that, he doesn't have a single weapon on him. You'd think that, if a soldier were in the woods, and if it were really a soldier, they'd have a weapon on them. That's what the 9-year-old, or even younger in some of the kids' cases, children thought. That's what the young children thought. They were like, yeah, this is not a soldier. It's probably just someone, like we thought earlier, that could happen, that our parents sent to scare us, whether it's from our village or the next town over. Like, yeah, this isn't a real soldier. Like, come on, who do you think you're fooling? Well, them. But, they just believe him. And the guy's like, hey, I have this camp. Just up a little ways, there's children there too, they're playing war, do you want to play war with me? And they're like, yeah, sure! And they're like, okay, come with me, and they're being stupid, and they come with him. And, yeah, once they get there, they realize, there's not children, this is, something's wrong. They realize that there's just other guys that look like him there, and they're like, wait, this isn't right. You said there'd be other kids. Why isn't there anyone else our age here, or younger, or why are there no other children here? Like, what's up with that? Did you lie? And before they could really say or do anything, they get knocked out. They just feel a slip blow to the head and they're down. And when they come to, they can't really see easily. They can't see much. They're just in a dark crate, and obviously, like, they're kidnapped, so obviously unfortunately, they are bound. It's unfortunate, but yes, they are bound because, like, they're kind of low-lying but big enough crate to have several children in, but still kind of small. It's very cramped. There's not really much leg room, and, it's kind of low-lying, and, as disturbing as it is, yeah, of course they're gonna do that. It would be very suspicious to be in a country that you stole children from and having a screaming and moving cart. That would be very, very, very suspicious. So, yeah, of course, they did that, which is very messed up that I had to be like, oh yeah, of course, but, yeah, of course, because that's honestly what would happen. I'm pretty sure that's what they do. At least that's what I envision. So, that's what happened. And they were eventually, after some driving, after some time, they were dropped off at this place where other children were. and this was a training ground. Now, keep in mind, Natasha was not the youngest person there. There are people who were, like, as young as 4 or 5 there. So, very young, very impressionable, very gullible, just like she and her friends, because they're just like, what could possibly go wrong? And they're being very, very naive and trusting. And so, they are trained, and not many of them survive this. And Natasha and a few others do because, you know, they have had farm experience. They've had experience working on the farm. And now, I personally don't work on the farm, but I do have family members who have worked on the farm or have worked in the fields, such as my own mother. She worked in the fields for 2 summers. When she was a young kid, she ended up getting very strong. Now, this isn't just 2 summers. In this case, it's these children, they've been doing this their entire lives, or almost their entire lives at this point. They have been working tirelessly to exhaustion every single day of their life. So, yes, they would have better strength and endurance compared to most kids. And also you have to realize that this isn't just some, oh, here's a sword, ching, 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 combat, like, training. It is full on, you are going into combat in a few months. You are going to the battlefield in 2 months. There's hardcore combat training, like with swords, with bows, like, they are going hardcore because these people are about to be on the battlefield. They're hoping to preserve their ranks in some way, shape, or form, in a very messed up way, and they end up forcing, like, these kids to do very hardcore combat training, and let's be honest, a lot of children, like, 10 and younger, like, maybe even 10 and younger, like, a lot of children 10 and under wouldn't be able to physically do that, especially if they haven't had the, you know, farm work. They haven't been doing farm work, such as Natasha, or they haven't been doing heavy-duty work, where it would build up their endurance, where they could probably endure a lot more than the average child. They would be able to endure way, way more than, say, you know, some kid who's never even been in the field once. Like, they would be able to endure so, so much more. So, you have to keep that in mind. Like, it's not like it was just Natasha, it was other kids who were like her, too. So, you know, they're really going at it, and after 3 months, they are shipped off to the camp where these soldiers stay, and no, they do not get to stay in the barracks, where the, I guess you could say, more senior, advanced soldiers get to stay, or things like that. They get to stay way near because the barracks are way in the back, like way, 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 way in the back, but near the front is where most people stay, like in tents. And an army camp, you would kind of expect, like, camp isn't like, they're right near the battlefield, so yeah, you would kind of expect them to be staying in tents, which is what they'd stay in this case, and she stayed there, and of course, like, she's still 9 at this point, okay, because I guess you could say it was early on in the year that she was taken and forced into that, so she would still be, like, 9 at this point. She wouldn't be 10 quite yet. But what happens is, you know, she's on the battlefield, and she eventually goes onto the battlefield, and this is very triggering, because this is actually, to some people, because it's violence towards a kid, unfortunately, that's just something that happens in the comic. You'd expect that with child soldiers, like I mentioned in the trigger warning. But, you know, one thing that happened is that Natasha, she came face to face with, as you would expect, an enemy soldier. Now, one of these soldiers, actually, a lot of the soldiers couldn't bring themselves to murder what is clearly a young child, because let's be honest here, despite the stress that she might have gone through, she did go through, in combat training, she is quite, young. You can tell, I'm pretty sure if someone's like a 9-year-old child, you can probably tell that they're a really young child, right? Right, and they couldn't bring themselves to kill a young child. However, what they did do is very messed up. It's a really twisted way. I guess you could say they're trying to save her, kind of? I don't even know if save is the right word at this point. Like, can you even say save in this? I don't even know if you can consider it save, but basically, I guess you could say they quote-unquote tried to save her, and what they did is try to incapacitate her. So, in her case, they tried to blind her. Now, they did successfully get one of the eyes out. And keep in mind, she's struggling. She's trying to fight back. She's trying to save her own life here. And, you know, unfortunately, that is a grown adult against a 9-year-old kid. And no matter how much farm work that kid has, I'm pretty sure that most adults, in fact, a lot of adults, could probably easily overpower a 9-year-old child. Because, you know, a 9-year-old child wouldn't be anywhere near as strong as an adult. Usually, I'd say. You know what I mean? Okay, I hope you know what I mean. But basically, she is not anywhere near as strong as an adult, so they try to incapacitate her. No matter how much she struggles, you know, she's not gonna be able to do too much. She can only do so much. And, you know, one of the soldiers from her side, and a separatist named Chris, they them pronouns, I'll get into the species lore before I do Chris's bio, but they, you know, they see what's happening. Chris, and we'll get this into this when I get to their bio, but they were once a child soldier themselves. Not only that, but they just, you know, they can't stand seeing a child getting hurt, because that's a child getting hurt, you know. And, you know, basically, they end up saving her. They saved her. And, obviously, you know, they did not come out of it without a scratch or anything, but, you know, thank goodness they saved her, because, she was not doing too good. She had a very busted up nose. Well, not only from, well, obviously when you save her, like, there's probably going to be something there that happens as they were trying to, because they're trying to take out her other eye. She has a scar there, and, like, you know, their hand's going to move, like, they're going to jerk, because, the enemy soldier was blasted with magic. And, I'll get into it when it goes to the species lore, but I guess more into it when it comes to species lore. But when it comes to a Satyr-Trust-Lucus, or however you pronounce Latin, their powers kind of work in a way. It's very basic magic, but when they blast you, it feels like you're burning, but you're not burning. There's no actual fire, in the sense of fire, but you are burning in the sense of maybe you have a chemical burn. That sort of thing. So, in other words, they basically chemically burn. They gave this enemy soldier a chemical burn. That's what happened. And so, you know, if you get a chemical burn, especially in the facial region, which is where they did this, it's gonna hurt a lot, and you're probably going to, especially if it's like a blast to the face, you're probably gonna drop whatever's in your hands and whatever you're doing, and make sure you're okay too. You're probably gonna do that. Let's be honest here, even if you're in the middle of trying to incapacitate a child, which is very messed up. Okay, so yeah, so you know, Natasha is saved, and she is rushed to like the medical area to a medic, and they do their best, and they can't really save her eye because it's out. She doesn't have it. She has a scar there, and she's in and out of consciousness for like several weeks. Of course, you'd expect this. This person just lost an eye. They have their nose mangled up and broken. Let's see, they nearly lost the other eye. They probably had a concussion from all of that. Also, probably from, you know, when they were training, they probably had several concussions, or at least one. So, yeah, they're gonna be in and out of consciousness and in and out of resting quite a bit. So, for like a few weeks, she is like that. And when she's, I guess, kind of okay enough, they send her back to training. And, you know, the reason that they do this is because, you know, she's missing an eye. They're gonna have to train her so she knows what to do without the eye, because what's gonna happen without the eye? Like, you're gonna need to know what you're doing without the eye. You can't just know what you're doing with the eye and think that's gonna be all that you need to do from there on out. Like, no, that's not how it works. I'm sorry. No, it doesn't work like that. So they basically have to retrain her so she can work without an eye, and they do that, which is also where she picks up on her tactic, because, you know, no duh. They're gonna train her to do things without an eye. They might as well actually train her to do things without an eye. So that's what they do, like I said. So she is trained. No, she has a really thick neck here. I don't really care. Do I really care? Enough to mention it, yeah, I don't know. But basically, you know, they send her back. She trains for basically like 3. Because originally she trained when she was like, before all of this, she trained for 3 months. And so she trained for 4 months, because obviously she's gonna need to know a bit more, because she's literally missing an eye, and she's like a 9-year-old child. So when she comes back to the camp finally, she's about 10 years old, I'd say. She's 10 years old. And so she does go up to Chris, and she thanks them profusely because they saved her life. In fact, Chris is one of her friends. That's one of the people, like, you know, after plenty of chats with them, she feels like she can trust them. She really feels like that she can trust them, because not only did they save her life, but they seem to have some pretty good views. Like, they even inspire her, and actually they do inspire her they basically fuel a motive for her, which is basically, or like, I guess a goal for her, which is basically that she will fight her the best she can. Not for the Lorien army, necessarily, but so maybe they don't have, so basically, she does that so that the Loriens won't have to take as many children, and that less children would have their childhoods taken away. Because, of course, you know, like, her childhood was basically taken away because of this, and she doesn't want anyone else to suffer like that. Like, you know, as much as she might dislike others, she doesn't want them to suffer that way. No, she doesn't. And, you know, Chris does inspire her, like, because she feels like, wow, that's so true. Oh my goodness, I agree with this. Like, you know, she agrees. So basically, she ends up having that motive. Like, it feels a new motive for her, or just kind of a goal for her, I guess you could say. Maybe not a motive, that was really grammatically incorrect, but I feel like that was. But basically fuels a desire for her to keep other children out of harm's way, so that they don't have to endure what she did. I don't know if I mentioned this, but it mentions this in her bio, and I think I should mention this now. Nah, never mind, actually. I'll mention it when I get to Chris's bio, because it'll be more important then, because it actually pertains to Chris and not so much Natasha. Although it does say in Natasha's bio that I have linked down below, so if you prefer to read that, I totally understand, because I am an awkward mess to listen to. So, you know, it does do this, and she definitely has some inspiration from her friend. And so, you know, and I will get into alcoholism here. You know, what she dealt with was very, very traumatic. I mean, like, all the way from when she was taken, like, that is a horribly traumatic thing to go through. Whereas, no, I don't condone alcoholism. After, you know, she would have, like, night terrors. Because a lot of soldiers and veterans and things like that, they do have night terrors from their time at war. And it's not just her war experience, but other really traumatic experience. Like, she lost one eye, nearly lost the other. She feels like she can't trust anybody, because trusting people is what got her into the whole mess in the first place. That's why she's in this war, because she blindly trusted this guy who claimed to be a soldier, and it's just fun and games, and, oh, I just have a camp a little ways up, you just have to join me. And, like, you know, trusting got her into this mess, and because of that, she feels like she can't really trust anyone. She feels like no one's to really be trusted, and she feels really kind of alone, and she's dealt with a lot of trauma, and she really does deal with a lot of issues in that regard, and, you know, it's not going to be great. And with night terrors, it's going to obviously cut down on her ability to sleep. Now, this is kind of important, because, you know, she'll be having night terrors, and also it'll just kind of keep her up at night. It will. It really would, in her case. And she would be kept up, and, you know, eventually, all this time of not being able to relax, because let's be honest here, she's not able to relax in the slightest. She never finds herself, and I do state in her bio, she finds herself quite unable to rest, and she finds that she is unable to accomplish what she set out to do once she came back, like, for a while. And now she kind of considers, maybe I should start drinking. Now, she doesn't for a little bit. I will say now, she does not for, like, a few years. Maybe around, like, 3, maybe, that's, like, a big, maybe, like, 2 or 3 years. So, like, she doesn't start drinking until she's around, 12, 13, 14, that sort of range. So I think youngest she would have been 12, or oldest she would have been 14. So, you know, she's around that age range, like, most likely probably, like, 14, 13, and yeah, this underage drinking, it's not great, but, you know, she ends up drinking, because she just feels like she can't take it anymore, and that she needs something to relieve all this pain with. And unfortunately, that does mean she ended up drinking when she was underage. The age of drinking in the United States and in her country, Gloria. That's not really her country per se, but I guess kind of quote unquote her country. Yeah, she does end up engaging in underage drinking, which is obviously serious. I don't condone actual underage drinking. Don't get that messed up. But she ends up doing that. Let's be honest. At the end of the day, she ends up doing that when she's that age, because she just really can't take any more nights without sleep. She can't take it. She's like, I can't get anything accomplished. Like, I need it. And so, she does use it as a way to not only to cope with what she's dealing with and what she's feeling, but as a way to kind of forget and stuff, but also to get some sleep, because she sees people get blackout drunk. She would see that. Let's be honest here. As much as we don't want to imagine that she'd see that, she would definitely see that and definitely pick up on that. Let's be honest here. She would. She really would. And so, she picks up on that, and she ends up, she's like, okay, I'm gonna start drinking. Seriously, I see how it affects others. I see what it does to others, and maybe I'll get some sleep. And, they seem, this will be great. Like, I'll be able to, I'll be able to cope. I'll be able to be more emotionally stable. I can relax. I can sleep, which will mean that I can get what I want done. And it'll be great. It'll be great. I'll get some rest. This is great. So when I'm like that age 12, 13, 14, probably more likely to be 13 or 14, on the older side of that, definitely, she ends up drinking, which is, again, not good, especially because she's underage, but, it's not good. You shouldn't use alcohol to cope with your issues, but unfortunately, not all veterans do this, obviously. I'm not saying all veterans do this, but, there are high rates compared to, I guess, the quote-unquote normal population, higher rates of alcoholism within veterans than, say, your average Joe. I mean, as average as the average Joe is, but, there are fairly high rates of that, and, sure, she's not necessarily a veteran in this case, but she is certainly a very troubled soldier, so she's gonna end up drinking, and she does. She really does, which is not good. But she does it as a way of coping, and she finds out, once she starts drinking, hey, this works. This really works. Wow, this is amazing. Why didn't I do this before? I'm sleeping, because, when she passes out, she ends up waking up at some point, and she's like, wow, did I end up sleeping? Cool. That's great. I feel more awake. A little off, because she's hungover, but, I feel more awake. I feel better than I have in years. That's what she feels. And she's like, yeah. And when she is drinking, she's like, wow, what? I'm not remembering. What am I even upset at? She's feeling oh yeah, I'm forgetting. I'm not remembering. This is great. This is amazing. Maybe I'll be able to accomplish what I want to accomplish better without things getting in the way all the time. And she ends up eventually forming an addiction. Now, eventually over time, yes, she does notice, hey, wait a minute, I may not be as functional as I thought myself to be at first, but at the same time, with her, she thinks, oh, but is that really something to be worried about? Because, it's all outweighed by all these other things. Are you serious? Oh, the benefits far outweigh the cons. What am I even worried about? And so, of course, she keeps doing it, despite knowing that maybe it's not the greatest thing for her, but she's like, oh, it far outweighs whatever this bad stuff is that I'm experiencing. Hungover, maybe I'm not as productive as I thought, but, oh, I'm getting rest, so maybe I'll be more productive in the future, and I'm forgetting, and oh, I just feel better when I do this. She ends up feeling like she needs it, because she feels like otherwise she won't be able to rest. She feels like she won't be able to possibly be slightly more productive. She feels like she won't be able to do all these things that she wants to do, and unfortunately she ends up developing an addiction, as one would in this case, because let's be honest here, that's exactly what would happen in this sort of scenario. let's not sugarcoat it, that is what would happen, and that's what ends up happening with her, unfortunately. It's just a sad truth with this character. She ends up developing an addiction to alcohol to help cope with the trauma and stress she has had to deal with all this time, and, you know, she also does it to feel more productive, even if at the end of the day she's really not, because she's like, oh, I'm getting rest, that's good for me, rest is good for me, I need rest, that sort of thing, like I keep saying. So, yeah, that's what ends up happening with her. That's just what ends up happening to her. And, you know, eventually, and after like a year into drinking, and I know maybe it should be a little shorter than that, but I have it, so maybe about a year into when she's doing this, you know, her higher-ups start to notice, like the higher-up officers are like, hey, what's up with this one soldier not being as productive as usual? Usually she's a lot more productive than this. Like, something's up. And they end up realizing, oh, she's drinking, and she's supposed to be focusing on, you know, combat and fighting, and, you know, she's supposed to be a focused warrior. She's usually a lot more useful than this. This isn't good. So they end up, you know, you need to come into the, you know, maybe I feel like not necessarily general, but like, you know, you come into the lieutenant or higher-up's office, or wherever they would be, not necessarily office, but wherever they're staying, or you need to meet with them, basically, we need to have a meeting, we need to talk, sort of deal, basically that sort of deal. And she's like, okay, and so she ends up going, because, you know, it's her superior officer, she's gonna have to kind of do that, you know, whether you like it or not, she's gonna have to do that, so she does that. And, you know, they end up recommending her, like, hey, you can't be doing this, it's really cutting back on your productivity, we need you out there, like, come on, like, it's a war, it's not all fun and games, like, you can't just be doing something that will cut back on your effort and your productivity, like, what are you doing, are you trying to make us look bad, weak, or things like that, because, you know, there's this hungover soldier on the battlefield who would normally be pretty effective, but now is severely lacking for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, no, you really need to cut back on whatever you're doing. We don't want you to have alcohol, because it is really cutting back on what you're doing. Not only that, but you're underage, so we're gonna have to take away that ability, and they kind of strip her, I guess, of whatever, like, basically they make sure that no one lets her into the areas that are serving alcohol, or the supply areas that have alcohol stored in there, so they don't let her in there, because, well, she's a child too, well, no, duh. I shouldn't have to really explain too hard, but, basically they're like, yeah, no, you aren't going in there because you're a child, and you also, or you can't be doing this, so they don't let her in there. They make sure there's someone there, or that whoever usually is there knows that, hey, don't let this person in, or just a general notice, like, hey, this person isn't allowed here, don't let them in there, because, you know, they told her not to. And, you know, for a little while, she isn't doing that, but, you know, that need is really strong, as one would expect it to be, because she has an addiction to this stuff. And so she ends up sneaking some of it, which is not good, and she ends up getting caught, because, duh, you really think they wouldn't catch on to what she's doing? You know, I think someone eventually would be like, hey, she's acting a bit drunk, wait a minute, what's in that flask, kind of deal, like, yeah, we know what game you're playing, we're not about to play it. So basically, you know, she gets caught, she gets further reprimanded, and, you know, further in trouble, and they're basically cracking down hard, because they're like, yeah, no, we're not gonna let you get away with this. And so basically she is completely, like, not alcohol, kind of alcohol free. Yeah, at that point she would be completely alcohol free, which is good for her, but at the same time she doesn't think it's good for her. She thinks, oh, what are these jerks doing? I needed that. That's what she's thinking. And she's like, I needed that. That stuff helped me. Like, how am I gonna get rest now? Like, how am I gonna be able to shut my eyes without, you know, having a nightmare, you know, remembering what happened to me? Like, seriously, I need that. She's not happy. But, you know, they're like, no, we're not gonna back down just because you complain. And so, basically, she was stripped of her ability to consume or get alcohol for a few years. And if I look at my notes, actually, it says approximately a year and a half. So at this point, she would probably bring around, like, anywhere from 14 to 16, probably more like 15, 16, that sort of deal. She's probably around that for a little bit, you know, because she's drinking for about a year, so she would have been 14, around 14. So at this point, she would be around, yeah, about 15, 16, I'd say. So, basically, she is stripped of it for that long, and then when she's, you know, when she's, after that time, she is allowed to do that. Given that she doesn't, of course, ever under, like, obviously, some people are probably going to keep an eye out, and make sure she isn't going to fall back into old habits, but basically, they kind of allow her to drink again, and she ends up doing that. She ends up staying away for a little bit, but eventually, yeah, the urge just gets too strong, and she ends up drinking again, unfortunately. But she ends up falling back into it, and luckily for her, it's around the time a little treaty was signed with the Aurelians, or the quote-unquote enemy, and they're like, oh yeah, we won't encroach on your land, any of your territories. No, we totally won't try to get land from you. And they don't for a little bit. They really don't for a little bit, but you know, this treaty, I'd say, it's a very, I guess the peacetime, not the treaty, but the peacetime. It didn't last for too long, like only maybe a few years, and that's not very long. That's not incredibly long. In fact, it's hardly any time at all, and so if you think about it, it's really not that much time. It isn't. So, you know, for a little bit, for a little while, they are, you know, relieved of duty, kind of course, until the next thing pops up, provided that they're not too old, and so that they basically, okay, yeah, and, you know, I know I didn't mention it earlier, but when she was taken, she was told that she could never go back to her home country, or else she or the others would be, you know, severely punished and were killed for that, because, no, you're not meant to desert us, like, we need you to fight, so you're gonna stay here and fight, which is exactly what they make her and the other soldiers do, so that's what she ends up doing, unfortunately, and so she is kind of forced to stay, and so what she does, she moves to a little town called, not town, but more of a village, kind of town, village, that sort of deal, called Key, which is about a day trip away by horse, or if she's in a kind of like a caravan, it's a day trip away. So she moves into a small town that, kind of small town that's just kind of, you know, not many people live there, but it's not like nobody lives there. And obviously she's just like, oh, it's a day trip away from 2 camps, so if they ever need me again, they can call on me, and I don't have to do too much. And, you know, she doesn't really want to interact with any of the townsfolk. She ends up getting home, so she interacted a little bit, but overall she didn't interact too much because, well, one, she didn't trust them, she doesn't know who they are. They are foreign people. Again, trusting is what got her into this whole mess in the first place. She's not going to be super trusting, she's not going to be super friendly, and luckily for her, everyone else is kind of intimidated by her because, one, she's walking around in, like, you know, obviously casual clothes. She has a sword on her, which is, I'd be kind of terrified if some woman was walking the streets with a sword on her, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I might be a little and it's like not like a prop, it's an actual sword, so it's a little terrifying, and if you kind of have to imagine her face, it doesn't look very intimidating here, but I will show you all with the comic cover. If you look at the comic cover, this is from a side angle. I know it kind of looks busted, but it is busted. Her nose is very mangled and broken, as you can tell, with a scar running across it. She's a scar here, and you know, it may not be as obvious in this picture or some pictures, but she does have, and I will illustrate it more when I actually get into the shading and stuff here, but she does have some relatively deep set wrinkles for a 19-year-old, at that, not at that time 19, but she was probably more like 17-ish, kind of like 16 or 17 at that point, because, you know, around that time, when she's around 16, probably around 16, I'd say, actually more like 16, yeah, and, you know, she probably would be kind of terrifying looking, like, people would be intimidated by her, people wouldn't bother her, and she's kind of grateful for that, because she's like, yeah, I don't want to have to be bothered with all the questions like, what happened to your eye, and things like that, because, you know, that's kind of it is a triggering topic for her, because, you know, she lost her eye in combat. It reminds her of what she had to deal with all the way back then, and she doesn't like having to think about it. And, you know, obviously she doesn't want to think about it, so she kind of is like, yeah, it's selected here, I'm an idiot, but basically, she just doesn't want to have to think about it, and she's just like, I'm not gonna think about it, and I don't want others bothering me about it, and I'm glad no one has. So, she's very glad. Like, in that sense, she's quite glad. And so, no one bothers her, and she doesn't bother them, and she ends up going to a bar. And, well, there she ends up meeting people who she will eventually call her friends. Not quite then, but eventually she ends up calling them her friends. And, you know, what happens is that she ends up sitting in a character who's very dwarf-like, and he's Baharwian, which I'll get into in a different chat. That's hopefully not too boring for you, but, you know, he's Baharwian, and he is very dwarf-like. They are part dwarf, but they're not technically full dwarf. They don't consider themselves a dwarf because they are also part elf and human. It's like, these don't exist in my species, or this is not an actual species in my comic, but, you know, that's like saying you have a mermaid, fairy, human hybrid. Do you call it a fairy? No, because there's the mermaid and human part. Do you call it a human? No, because it's part fairy and mermaid. Do you call it a mermaid? No, because it's part fairy and human. Like, you can't call it any of that. So, it's kind of like that, okay? So, you can't really call it this, can't really call it the other thing, but you can't call it that other thing, if that makes sense. Like, you can't really call it any of those things. So, they don't. They just kind of, they call themselves something different. Baharwian. And his name is Angus. He's a very short, gruff man. He stands at 4'11". He's very short. Did I mention he's short? He's short, okay? He's a short, very dwarf-like man, and people often mistake him for one because he is wearing just a helmet that covers his elf-like ears. That would, you know, usually signify to most people, hey, he's not a dwarf, but, you know, like, basically what would be the signifier for most people is kind of covered up, so people kind of mistake him for a dwarf, and he goes up to her and is like, hey, you're sitting last, yeah, you're sitting in my spot, like, you need to move. That is my spot, that is my stool, move it. And she's like, excuse me, and she hopes, like, her, like, face will kind of intimidate him, and then one of her other friends, who's another Curlian, Bardu, who has a peg leg, and at the time he has a medical eye patch, which makes him look very pirate-like, considering all the stubble and stuff. You get the image, I think you do. But, you know, he looks very pirate-like, and it's like, ah, don't listen to him, he's just an asshole. Because of certain something I'll talk about when I get to his bio. But, you know, don't listen to him. And then Thalia, which is a very large being, basically a fairy that's human-sized, with torn up, useless, small wings that obviously used to be able to carry her during flight, but she can't fly anymore, clearly, if she's looking like that. So, you know, she doesn't look like, I don't know, she just kind of, that's what she looks like, basically, is what I'm trying to say. She looks like that. And so, essentially, they're like, hey, please move. And obviously, well, that's what Angus says, and she's like, no. And there's a little bit of, like, maybe some harsh words thrown about. After a while, like after a few days and weeks, I should say, then they end up interacting more, and end up finding out that they all have quite a bit in common, such as they all served for the Lorien army. 2 of them were child soldiers. Angus was not, but Bardu and Thalia is the very fairy, like, basically a giant fairy. That's basically what she is, and, no, they were both child soldiers as well. They can relate to her on a personal level in that way, because they also had to deal with that. They had to deal with it just as she has, maybe not under the same circumstances, but they had to deal with it, and so they can kind of relate to her. And because of that, of course, they are like, yeah, they end up becoming friends. Now, does that mean they instantly trust each other? No. Obviously, they have some things that they don't trust each other on, even if they are friends, because they're just not sure who they can or can't trust because of their life experience. But, you know, they just basically, they're not sure who they can trust, but they trust each other enough to be calling each other friends, basically. And so they do call each other friends, which is really nice. I feel like everyone, almost everyone, obviously, basically everyone deserves a friend out there, Everyone deserves a friend. So Natasha, she has friends. And, you know, they do agree on a lot of things. Like, they agree that, you know, Loria shouldn't be taking child soldiers. They should be recruiting grown adults. More grown adults from the tributary states and, their own country, actually. So they're like, you know what, you don't have to do that. You have grown adults. You have grown adults in your own country, and the other countries you take things from are tributary states, so you shouldn't be taking kids. They agree on things like that. They don't agree on everything, but they agree on, they have some common ground there, and some things that they can relate with each other, relate to when it comes to each other. They can relate to each other, which is, it's nice. It's nice. So, you know, they end up relating to each other to some degree. Maybe not all, but to some degrees. And they end up calling each other friends, and they have a good time. And it's not always in the bar either. They sometimes do it, like, say, like at one of their houses. They're hanging out, or maybe somewhere that's a little more secluded but still public. Like, things like that. Like, so no one want to bother them, but they're still in the public. But, you know, a little more secluded or something like that. They'll just hang out and have fun, or just kind of get to know each other, because, you know, they can relate to each other, and they feel like they have some common ground, and eventually they're like, yeah, we can trust each other. We've been through such similar experiences. Like, they know what it's like, and so, you know, they end up becoming friends. Now, Natasha normally would never be friends with people, or many people in general. They wouldn't usually get along with people, and she doesn't. But, you know, these people are some exceptions, because she feels like, hey, I have a connection with these people. They can kind of understand me, and I really appreciate that. So, she does trust them, which is good for her. Good for her. She found someone she can trust, right? At least that's how I see it. I'm like, good for her. That's good. Honestly, everyone needs a friend. Everyone out there. Even you. Yes, you need a friend too. And, you know, there's just something that, you know, she does need one, so that's what she has. And, basically, I know I keep saying basically, but as you can guess, I have to stop saying basically, but as you can guess, they became friends. And, eventually, maybe around, you know, 3 years, around 3 years, 2 or 3 years, the treaty was broken by the Aurelians. Provided I didn't scare you guys all off with the, just rambling. I hope you guys stick around, because this is kind of important, because it leads up to what happens when the comic starts off. So the treaty is broken, and they all have to go back to their respective camps. Some of them to the same camp, some of them not. They have to all go to their respective camps at the end of the day that they are staying in, or forced to stay in. And so, the comic starts off with Natasha in the cart, or not the cart, the caravan, and, just kinda, you know, they're making their way to the camp. They are making their way to the camp, and that is where it starts off. Now, provided I didn't scare all of you off with my incessant rambling about my character and over-explaining in repetition despite having somewhat of a script. Yeah, I had some points, some talking points. It's more centered than, say, the last live stream, but certainly not great. This could be improved. This is only my second live stream, but I will take this time to look at the questions. If you had questions, feel free to re-ask them, because I'm about to look. 3, 2, 1. Woo! Hi, why didn't I ask for a phone call? Did I move or something? I never got a phone call. Also, my favorite part. About what you've been writing? Let's see, I know, I'm still gonna be friends. I'm so sorry, Luna. I know, I don't have a lot of time for personal stuff. It's not you, it's me. Sorry, I don't want to have to figure out this, but sorry, Luna, that you feel this way, but I'm still your friend. I'll still interact with you. I still consider myself a friend. It's just I don't have a lot of time in my personal life besides my comic and things I actually have to keep up on. This is about the only thing I can do for myself besides, like, shower and things like that. Otherwise, I'm swamped with school, homework, and, like, medical issues. So, I'm sorry, it's not you. But, I do remember you, Mizuki, if you're still watching. I still remember you. You asked this probably a long time ago, and I was not looking at questions, but I do apologize. I don't even know if anyone's watching at this, but 3 people are watching. 3 people still watching? 1 person's watching, okay. Hello, my one watcher. I appreciate your viewership. but this was very, very awkward. And I will answer things in the comment section as I see fit. But basically, a good synopsis for Natasha's bio, and just what you have to know. I guess what I'd like you guys to know about her is that she was a child soldier. She was taken at 9. And obviously, it's very traumatic. One might be able to guess it's gonna be pretty traumatic. And so, yeah, she's not great. And she ends up getting, an enemy soldier attempts to incapacitate her because they don't want to kill a child. They can't bring themselves to do it. She is saved by Sator Trasliscus, who is neutral presenting, or just kind of who is non-binary. I know people might be like, well, what do you mean? I have questions about that, but it'll be explained when I get into the lore. I'm sorry that this is just so rambly, but I really, yeah. So a good synopsis is that she lived in a farming village. Her mother warned her, hey, don't go into the woods with your friends, or especially not alone, because the soldiers will come and take you. She warned her. It's not like she wasn't being a good mom. She was being a good mom. She warned her and everything. She wanted to make sure her child was safe, but like Natasha didn't believe her. Ended up going into the woods with her friends, 5 of her friends. They end up meeting a soldier who was actually a soldier, but Natasha and a few others don't really believe that because he's not really dressed like a soldier and he doesn't have a weapon. Makeshift. He doesn't have a weapon. Whatever. So basically, they are 3 of them are smart. And they don't go with the guy who claims to be a soldier and ask them if they want to play war, and that he has a little camp where other kids are there who are also playing actively, and that they can have whatever ranks they want. So, 3 of them are like, yeah, this is weird. I'm not about to fall for this. You one person take watch while 3 of us, I don't know, not 3, 2 of us go to tell an adult about what we just saw, because, obviously that's what you should do, and obviously some of them know, but Natasha and a few others are very, very naive, and they trust this blind, not this blind stranger, but they just kind of blindly trust the stranger. They trust him, like, oh yeah, he's not even dressed like a soldier. He doesn't have a weapon, so they go with him. And they end up getting kidnapped and forced into hardcore combat training, like they're going to the battlefield in 3 months. They're not just going, oh, here's how you hold a sword. It's, yeah, this is how you kill a person. These are all these tactics, these are all these moves. They're teaching them everything. So, and, Natasha, she does end up making it, but a lot of children don't, because they, unlike Natasha, a lot of them don't have the endurance that they built up, like she did, because she lived on a farm her entire life. She lived her life on a farm, with her single mother, and, she does a lot of farm work, and she's been doing it all her life. She's she's stronger than maybe your average child at that age, at 9 years old, so, she ends up making it, but not many children do. I mean, she's not the only one, but certainly not many children end up making it because it's just too much for a child. The child's body can't really do that. It's not made for all that work. It's not made to be able to do, in fact, a lot of adult bodies aren't made to do that. Because adults end up dying too, so yeah, no. Not exactly like it's something she can deal with, but yeah. So basically that's one of the things, and it's just a thing. And so, as one might be able to guess, they're forced into combat eventually, like around a little bit after after 3 months, they are forced to the battlefield, and at which point an enemy soldier takes sight of Natasha, and while they're on the battlefield, and can't bring themselves to kill a child, but in a weird twisted way try to save her. Their view, save her, quote unquote, and so they end up trying to incapacitate her by blinding her. And you're like, oh yeah, she might be able to live, but she won't have to fight because she would be blind, and they'd have absolutely no use for her, and she wouldn't be able to do anything. She wouldn't be able to use her sword or shield, nothing. So they try to blind her in a weird twisted way of saving her. And so, that's not a good idea. It's not going to go down too well. And yeah, that's what happens. And so, well, he's successful in taking out one of her eyes, and she is struggling. And she ends up, getting her nose kind of messed up. And a fellow, Citrusluscus, who is on her side, ends up saving her, which is amazing. Bless Chris. just bless. But basically, they end up saving her life. And yeah, it's not like they go unscathed either. They end up getting hurt in the process too, which is, kind of expected. They end up basically, kind of with a magic blast that essentially, effectively, just kind of chemically burns the soldier that is trying to blind Natasha. And, her nose ends up getting severely broken in the process because, like, the guy's trying to take out her other eye, and there's a Scarlet, it gets dangerously close, but in the process of all of this, and with her struggling like crazy for her life, she ends up getting her nose really messed up, and so she's in and out of consciousness for a few weeks, and then, they end up sending her to retrain for a few months, like 4 to be exact, and then she comes back, and then she thanks Chris, because Chris saved her life, so she thanks Chris, she thanks them, and, they end up eventually becoming friends, and they agree on some things, and they're maybe not the best friends, but they agree on a lot of things. And so, eventually, they're just like, yeah, we think this and this and this. And so eventually just kind of inspires her to, maybe have a new desire, a new motive, and she ends up wanting to work her hardest so that no other children, to be exact, would have to fight. So less and less children would have to fight. She wouldn't be able to help all of them, but she'd at least be able to help some, because they wouldn't have a need for getting as many if they're there's soldiers effectively working, and maybe they wouldn't need to, and that's what she thought. Of course, she's like 10, 11, so yeah, maybe not obviously not saying 10, 11-year-olds can't make good decisions, or rational decisions, but she may not be able to make as rational of a decision as, say, an adult with a fully developed brain, but, obviously it's not it's great, it's the way it is, but basically, yeah, she is, she's maybe not the smartest about it, but she still has she has good intentions in that way. But, what she had to deal with, it was very traumatic. So after a few years, she's seen other soldiers get blackout drunk. She's seen what it can do. She's seen them claim that they've forgotten what they deal with. So she, around the age of 13, 14, something like that, she ends up drinking. And she thinks, oh wow, it works out great. I'm getting sleep, because, she ends up waking up after she blacks out at some point. Even if it's with a horrible hangover, she thinks it's better than what she's had to deal with before, because she's dealt with a hell of a lot. So she's had to deal with a whole hell of a lot, so she's dealt with it, and she ends up basically, she just kind of ends up getting addicted to it, because she's like, oh yeah, there's some bad things, maybe I get hungover, eventually she's like, oh, maybe I'm a little less protective than usual, but, these benefits, they really seem to outweigh all these cons. Like, I'm getting sleep, I'm probably more functional on the whole, because I'm actually sleeping. That's, like, one of the main things. She's like, I'm sleeping, I'm more functional. It's great. And unfortunately for her, it's not really that way. And I guess, obviously don't condone underage drinking, but that's what she's doing. Even for her country, where the drinking age is, or not her country, but the country that she serves for, that she's essentially forced to live in as well. She's underage, she's not 18, so she cannot drink. But she does it anyways, and eventually the higher-ups notice this, and she ends up getting reprimanded and stripped of her ability. Unable to fight the temptation, because, she's addicted to this stuff, remember? Addicted to alcohol. She is an alcoholic. She ends up, of course, getting some alcohol! To which she gets reprimanded even further, and there's higher surveillance on it, and she's forced to do, I didn't mention this at first, but she is forced to do some more tasks than usual as well, as a punishment, on top of, stripping her completely of alcohol and heavily enforcing it, and I mean heavily enforcing it. And so, after about a year and a half of this, she is, keep in mind she was drinking for about a year, normally, after a year and a half, this is kind of, the suspension on the alcohol was kind of let up, and around that time, a little bit after, maybe a month or two after, there is a treaty that has been signed that they were working on, and that basically, she and the other soldiers, whereas she was told early on, hey, if you try to go back to your home country, you'll be killed, she's basically, forced to move, or move to a new place. So what she does is that she goes to somewhere that is not too far away, just a day trip away by horseback, or just in a caravan, basically, and she ends up moving. That's what she does. She ends up moving to a small town called Key, And luckily for her, she doesn't have to do much human interaction. She's happy because she doesn't get a bunch of incessant and annoying questions that she'd rather not answer, such as, what happened to your eye? Because of her very intimidating appearance, as she has scars all over, deep-set wrinkles, at least for someone her age. She clearly has missing out. She looks very intimidating. She's like a mangled face. Like, she would be very intimidating. Oh yeah, and she's walking around with a sword in public. That too would be really scary, actually. So, yeah, no one really wants to mess with her or bother her. At most, they might say hi from the other side of the street. Like, they're not gonna take their chances. They don't really mess with her. They don't fuck with that. So, they don't. And so, she's happy with that. And, you know, she ends up finding a bar. And she ends up, you know, obviously drinking. Because she's addicted to alcohol. She's an alcoholic. So, yeah, she ends up drinking. She ends up, you know, feeling whatever she feels. Because she's like, no, I don't want to remember. And maybe I can actually get some meaningful sleep. Or maybe I can't do it as much as I normally would have while out in combat for my cause. I can still help myself cope. And that's what she does. That's what she wants to do. And so, while she's there, a very short, gruff, dwarf-like man, incredibly dwarf-like, although he adamantly denies it, named Angus, standing at 4'11". It's like, hey, lass, you're in my seat. And she's just like, are you sure? And she tries to look, maybe she's hoping that her looks will intimidate him into moving elsewhere. And he kind of catches on. He's like, yeah, I'm not falling for that. I know. It's like, you're all bark, no bite, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, nah. Let's be honest here. You're not gonna do anything. That sort of thing. Like, yeah, I don't think so. Basically, he doesn't really fall for it. And so, you know, Buddy's like, don't listen to him. He's just a jerk. Because, you know, well, surprise, surprise, Angus is the one who kind of made him look like a pirate, because he's like peg leg, and he's a Curlian, just like Natasha, and so he is, you know, he's just an asshole. I mean, he's a friend. He's just an asshole. Won't listen to him. And Thalia, she's also there. She's a very, she's like kind of human height, just a regular human height, I should say. Basically a fairy with very messed up and broken wings, clearly shredded wings, and so. Just small, ripped up, useless wings. And so there's like, you should move, and that sort of thing. And so she ends up doing that, and eventually, after a while, she ends up having more interactions with them, and she eventually forms a connection with them. Now, this is not common with her because she doesn't trust many people, because trusting is what got her into this whole war situation in the first place. It's the only reason her childhood was messed up. That's how she sees it. Like, oh, my childhood was messed up because I trusted too much. So, she doesn't trust very many people. Not saying she doesn't trust anyone, but she doesn't trust very many people. Huge difference. Anyways, she ends up being able to trust them, able to call them her friends. Which she does. She does definitely call them her friends. And so, which is great. And they may not trust each other completely, but they trust each other more than, she trusts them more than, say, the average townsfolk there. And so, she definitely, she's happy about that, and they meet outside the bar too. They're not just in the bar. They meet maybe at one of their houses, or maybe somewhere public, but a little more remote. Still public, just a little more remote, so they won't get pestered by people, or just like people won't butt into whatever they're trying to do, things like that. And so they end up just, you know, they just hang out as they do until, of course, they are forced to kind of stop because, you know, Eurylians, which is who the Lorians are battling against, they're like, hey, they've broken their the treaty, they've broken their truce, like they're advancing more on our land. Hey, all of you, you need to get back to wherever camp they assigned you to. Like, hey, you need to get back there right now because we're going to war again. They broke the treaty, they broke the truce. We need to do this, and so that's what they end up doing. And so that's what ends up happening. So you can kind of imagine that. You can probably easily imagine that. So they are definitely, they do that. That's what they do. Long story short, that's what they do. They end up going back to the camps, and that's where it stops. And yeah. Hopefully, this is understandable. I'm gonna look at the comments again. Again, sorry Luna, I've not been able to interact with you, but it's just how it is. And it seems that nobody is really watching at this point. And if you are, say hi. Because I can answer questions right now. I'll answer questions in terms of the comic. So, yeah. Yeah, seems not. So, yeah. Hopefully this isn't too awkward. Hopefully you're informed. This is Hawk signing out.